Hello and welcome to NTT Nutrient Tracking Tool program video sessions. This is the session 1. In this session I will be generally talking about on NTT itself as what it is about, and then in the session 2 which comes in the next video, I go through as example through NTT program with you, and I show you the highlights of the program and how it can run. At this moment I would like to acknowledge my colleague Oscar Gallego and Dr. Edward Osei and many others that they have been helping to put this program together through the last 7-8 years. My name is Ali Saleh and I'm the research leader on this program, and NTT was developed by the Texas Institute for Applied Environmental Research modeling team at Tarleton State University with funding and technical support from USDA's Office of Environmental Markets, and additional funding from development entity was provided by NIFA, the USDA Conservation Innovation Grants Program, and various state and local government and agencies. So we will be talking about a general description of the NTT. It's basically NTT was built to evaluate the economic and environmental impacts of management practices at farm and small watershed levels. The economic portion of the NTT will become on the next version. That would be evaluate the economic impacts of the management practices and conservation practices that the farmer is going to do at the farm, and also in this watershed level. This entity is a free, user-friendly, web-based program, requires no software, and can be updated anytime that we feel that the science needs to be improved or the technology of the entity. The user directly get access to it. And this is accessible to anybody, and but mostly designed for producers, crop consultants, government officials, and also I would say the educational and researchers, and for use of the NTT to get access to Apex. The results can be used for evaluation of different programs. It could be a local government, farmer, producer themselves, and for different federal government programs such as trading and total maximum daily load (TMDL) and so on. The program uses agricultural policy environmental extender to predict runoff, nutrients, and sediment losses from agriculture and forest and pasture lands. And the map you see there, this is where places that we have entertained and evaluated NTT in different states. And in that includes Puerto Rico. We have evaluated for tropical crops in that part of the world. This is basically shows a nutrient tracking tool framework. There's 3 major parts to this program. One is the input file, and then the second part is the model itself, and the last one is the output. So in the first part of the model that we are looking at here, we are looking at national level data that we have gathered from every county within the United States and Puerto Rico territory, and that includes the weather, management, soils, and geometry. You basically can select the farm of your interest or area of interest within the map, the Google map, and then we collect all data that pops up with that area of interest. The next part is going to be running the Apex model, which I will talk about that in the next slide a little bit. And the Apex model takes this information that was generated by us and by user through their inputs, and then simulate the different scenarios and bring back the results for you, and compare the crop yield, nutrients, sediment, and atmospheric gases from cultivated land and forest and pasture land, and it says which of those practices are most effective and both for environment and also economically. This modeling section of this, eventually we are going to be adding other models such as I said, economic FEM, and then also we are going to add some animal production routine model that is going to be doing some for life cycle analysis. So this module shows you that we could add other models to this and get different results from all those models that are going to be incorporated. Apex itself. Apex is developed by USDA scientists by leading major person on Dr. Jimmy Williams, that to predict the effects of different management scenarios on water quality, sediment yield, and pollutant loading from various land uses within field and a small watershed. The major components of them in this model, the majority of routines in this model is a physical based, very not much of lookup table or anything like that. So everything is simulated, basically. So from the weather, hydrology, erosion, nutrients, atmospheric gases, we are adding them methane, which is going to be available next version, and pesticides, crop growth, tillage management, routing, reservoir, groundwater grazing, and management, nutrient management or manure management. So this is a very comprehensive program that is very much emphasizes what's happening on the field, and from that and the farm level it just can expand to the bigger scale such as watershed. One thing about Apex that is very important and makes it very applicable to the tropical area such as Puerto Rico is that when you have multiple crop growing at one time, this model takes care of that. Up to 10 crops can all grow together and fight for the light and for the nutrients and water. And you can harvest at different time and kill some of those plants, and so you can do a lot of stuff that is happening in tropical world. And here's the farm watershed simulation of the NTT, which is basically if you have a farm that has multiple fields, then assuming this is like each one is sub-basin, and then you can evaluate the management practices within each of these fields, and then the Apex route them from one field to another, and so you can get the results at the edge of each field, or you can get the results at the edge of whole farm or watershed in this case. Some of the practices that can be simulated with NTT as management practices, there typically are those that are in NRCS standards book, and you can see basically a lot of those practices that you see here is in that book. One thing we do when we go places that there is none unique, for example in Mississippi they have something called pads and pipes, we have to develop technology and evaluate it and make sure that is available to the users so they can be accessing to the NTT for their needs. So we develop as we go along. And the databases that goes to NTT is as I said, three major ones. Weather files, which is very significant, and we have created I believe over 800,000 stations within the United States alone that you can get access to the daily rainfall, maximum minimum temperature, daily maximum minimum temperature of each of those stations. So when you select the area of interest that is close to any of those stations, the model automatically upload that for you. Then the second thing is very important is going to be the soil information. And the soil information that we have done here, we duplicated basically the Sergo database in our cloud in the computers. So in the case that some crashes happen on or too much traffic in Surgo site, so NRC survey site, we have duplicated and it's much more accessible. And beside that, we have written programs that fix the bugs. For example, if you're missing the bug density in one soils, then we have to look at the other information or publish routines to generate those numbers that is not available and required by Apex to run. The last thing is that you don't need to go through the have GIS layers. We have this Google map that you can get access and get information in a similar way as you do from soil survey site. And the other things we've done that for those who don't have access to the soil, in versions that is available in education and research education version, we have made people, let's say in Africa, to be able to create the soil layers from information they have, so they can use NTT. And slope calculation using the 10-meter DAM. So that's another thing we did. Many times you go to soil survey, you see the slope is 0 to 30% slope, 5 to 10, so on. And we don't know where the area of interest fall in within this range of slope. So what we have done, we have created the routines, and those uses a DEM layer and generate the slope up to 3 major soil within each field. So if you have 10 fields, that would be 30 soils, up to 30 soils. And then we will use that as a so we can a better calculation of erosion, which is the major part of the water quality. As far as the management goes, there's another major one. Local cropping management system has been generated as a default files for the whole country. So for every and Puerto Rico territory. So where every place you go, every state you go, you have a major cropping, and we have generated a default value, which we really recommend the producer to update that for the purposes, and then they can go with doing some evaluation of different management practices. The last slide shows here, it tells you about the versions that are available from NTT. This is the last version we had, and the site goes to it if you go to the site. And the current version is going to have 2 types of access to it. The one is 2 ways to get access to it, from the basic and from research and education. The basic is typically for farmers, and they will not have any much of, they don't need to do kind of evaluation parameters and this and that is the researchers wants to do. So this version allows them to go in and run their field and farm in simpler way and do the evaluation of the management practices. In the second version, which is research and education, as we call it, RE version, is more goes to the parameters and the Apex files, and then the looking at the creating the soil files if you don't have access to. So it's kind of more for evaluation. In both cases, in all 3 cases, we allow the people to use NTT as interface for Apex program, which is version 0806. Means that you get the area of interest selected from what you see in your farm or field and wherever you are, and then you can convert them to Apex files for evaluation for both education and research. That being said, none of these programs are without, they're not different in the heart. Every Apex files we use, every routine we use is the same among them. So the engine is the same. However, the access into NTT is different from each of those. Well, this is going to conclude this part of the video that we have for you to understand how the NTT is. In the next video, that is going to be demonstration video, and I will be going through example with you and show that NTT, then the current version of NTT works. Well, thank you, and if you had any question, please use the help key in the NTT and get in touch with us. Thank you so much.